Henry's Avalanche Talk provides education and training for skiers who want to go off-piste but want to learn how to manage the risk so they can stay safe and have more fun all at the same time. We do this through a program of Avalanche Talks, which can be got online or at live events. And we also offer transceiver training, where you can learn how to use the equipment on how to stay safe, and on snow courses in Val d'Isère.
So today's session, the theme again is going to be about managing risk and understanding how to manage risk. So we have with us Dan Egan, who is an extreme skier, a filmmaker, a coach, and a journalist. So, and he's and just published his, is it third or fourth book, Dan? I think. And,
third book.
Third book, and it's just about to publish his third book, 30 Years in a White Haze, which I think conjures up. I think the title itself conjures up everything we need to know about it. Dan's background: he's appeared in 14 Warren Miller films. He's skied in a lot of remote areas, and he runs a ski clinics program for people who want to experience what it's like to go with him, also to be pushed a bit more and to build their confidence and their understanding of risk. So you can find that at skiclinics.com. So what we're going to do here is just ask Dan to share with us his experience of various things in life, but in particular about taking risk. So, and Henry's with us, and as you've heard, and Henry will join in the conversation as we go through. And so, Dan, one of the things I noticed on your website was, it says here, I make my living by doing all the things that my parents taught me to do by the age of 10. Skiing, sailing, and soccer have been the mainstays in my life. My parents focused on teamwork, independent thinking, and self-responsibility. So do you want to talk a bit about how those experiences were formative in you being able to take the risks and achieve the things that you have?
Yeah, it's great to be here with Henry and you, Chris, and hi to everybody who's joining. It's nice to see a cross section of my professional friends and my school friends and good time life friends, as well as, all the mix with Henry's group. I think that's one of the great things about Henry and I, and is the cross section of people we bring together, and we do it through our Boston roots. As a kid growing up just outside the city of Boston, 7 kids in my family, my mom's strategy was just to get everybody outside every day. You just get out of the house and make sure you're home for dinner. That really was the only rule. So there was a lot to be explored. And, like I said in that statement, learning how to, sail with my dad in the Boston Harbor. The whole family skied. My parents were skiers, but we weren't what I would call a ski family, in that we didn't own any place up north. We just skied out of our house down the little hill that we lived on, and eventually joined a ski club and went north up to New Hampshire and Vermont. And of course, played soccer, team sports. And those 3 things really, well, actually 4 things. The fact that my parents were, hey, get out of the house, go out in the world and be home at a certain time. That is the guideline. And then the activities that we did just fostered a lot of independence, and it fostered a lot of confidence, because at that time in Boston, on the edge of the city, going into the city and having to navigate, everything that was the city, from trolleys and trains and buses, as well as, different attitudes in the city of Boston, very segregated with the different neighborhoods and things like that. It fostered sort of a survival mode. By the age of 12, I was sailing up and down the coast of Mass Bay, right outside of Boston, up to the North Shore, down to the South Shore, Quincy Bay, all around. And and really had a lot of confidence in the things I did. So, when it came to finding employment, I just searched in the direction of my passions, soccer coach, sailing, skiing. And from that, there were offshoots, productions and films and books, but mainly that was the main driving point.
Okay. And so, and how did that lead into the extreme skiing experiences? How did that lead you into the film work with Warren Miller, for example?
Well, with the Warren Miller work, my older brother John was 6 years older, and he had moved out of the house right after high school to become a ski bum up in Sugarbush, Vermont. And was basically, Warren back then used to go to the different ski areas and ask the marketing departments for the local hot skiers. And John's name came up in the late 70s as, one of the local hot skiers. He had only been a ski bum for a few years, but here he was skiing for Warren Miller in 1978, 79, 80, and they weren't big roles, but he was in the film and in the montage. And that was a big effect on me. He then competed on the pro level, the pro ski tour, race tour, and the pro mogul tour. He's the only skier ever to compete on both tours in the same year. And one time when the pro race tour came to a local Boston ski area, Neshoba Valley, owned by the famed Olympians Pam Fletcher family, where Henry and I raced as kids, the pro was there. And John said to me, he had stayed at the family house. He said, "Hey, Dan, I'm wearing my work clothes today." And he had his race sweater on and his stretch pants. And that statement never left me, that he was going to work, that he was going to try and fight his way into trying to make some money. And as a young man, a young boy, teenager, that had a big impression on me. So through that, eventually, as I was a ski bum in the mid 80s, washing dishes, the marketing department called me to ski for the film. They asked me if I had any ski clothing that didn't have any duct tape. And so I borrowed a sweater and a pair of pants, and John and I skied together for the first time for Warren Miller. And that led to, at that time, things were blowing up with Scott Schmidt, the film Steep and Deep, and sort of the extreme movement. So it was a natural place for us to go. But
were you aware of the risks at that time, Dan? Were you aware? I'm just thinking of you as a young man, and young men are not notorious for being cautious. So
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, we were, growing up just outside of Boston, hanging out in Boston, the music scene in Boston, hanging out at places like the Rat and the Channel. We were negotiating risk all the time. And from a very young age, surviving in that environment. Of course, in the 80s, it was all about punk rock and that sort of thing. So, and living that lifestyle on the edge, of course, I think sort of the risk mitigation came in first for survival reasons, leaving the house and being back home safe. And then when it got to the mountains, the whole idea of risk, we were just pushing the envelope as far as we could. When my brother taught me how to ski moguls, his advice was ski as fast as you can until you crash, and then pick your pieces up and do it again. And eventually you'll stop crashing every 10 feet. It'll be every 15, 50, and pretty soon you'll be the first guy to the bottom. And that's basically was our approach. It was balls to the wall.
And was the same thing with avalanche risk? And
well, that's a good question. By the time we start making our first movies for the North Face, really we were jumping off cliffs and skiing steep places that were somewhat in bounds in Lake Tahoe and at Squaw Valley and Alpine Meadows. It was Henry who, when we got reconnected at the Boston Ski Show, invited us over to Val d'Isere. And we came over originally to shoot a movie for a Japanese company in the late 80s. And Henry showed us around the resort and kind of hooked us up with different guides through Snow Fund and a few other places. And that was our first real introduction, because Henry asked the one question that we hadn't thought of. did you bring Peeps? And remember, Henry? And we were like, no, we don't have, we didn't have anything.
What's that, dude? One thing I just want to say also is that you were mentioning the big names back, way back, the Scott Schmidts and the Glenn Plakes that everybody would have known about, that you guys were all skiing with the Delarier brothers and everything. But then when you say we, you're referring to the Egan brothers. That was your brand for many years, was the Egan brothers. It wasn't so much Dan, it wasn't so much John, it was the Egan brothers that in all these movies and stuff. And you came over and you were starring as that. And yeah, I mean, I had to introduce you and many other people to the idea of preventing getting caught in an avalanche, and if the worst happens, how to get out. And one of the real challenges with the avalanche thing is that people like you and me as well, when we're pushing the limits, it's like trial and error, and you kind of pushing it, see what the feedback is. With avalanches, you don't get any feedback, and if you do, it can kill you. And you can do like 1,000, 2,000 times, do stuff that's really dangerous, and you think, well, this is working, so I'm getting to know it really well. And in fact, you've just been lucky. So it's a tough thing to communicate. In fact, it was during that time that I was guiding with you all, and there was a beautiful powder day, and I got you to a really safe place for beautiful blue sky, great powder, nice cold morning, and I was getting I was getting really bored because and I'll say this for the audience, most people don't know that shooting these films is really quite boring. It looks action-packed when it's been edited and everything. So I was getting bored, and I was missing out on a great powder day. So I went out with I think it was a girlfriend of John's at the time, and another guy who was shooting, and went straight into the last bit of the Grand Vallon that hadn't been tracked out, so to me, it was like, it's all been tracked out. we're going to get some fresh tracks finally. And the whole thing let loose. So I'd been really been conservative and talking to you guys about keeping it safe. And I think I was successful there. But I almost got myself killed during the photo shoot, but skiing for myself. And that was the one that got caught on video and then went into National Geographic. If any of you haven't seen one of my talks, I show it at every talk just to show how, even the experts get it wrong because of that reason. You don't get the feedback from the environment. But anyway, go ahead there, Dan. I don't want to steal the show.
Well, no, I mean, that's so true because, back then, the first guide that Henry connected us with was Yves Chardon. And Yves Chardon was a great skier. And, in typical French fashion, he would tell us the weight, and he would ski along the traverse, smoke a cigarette, and ponder it and look around. And of course, we thought it was some sort of mystery what he was doing. John and I don't know what he's doing. What do you think he's doing? I don't know, what's he going to do? And then he'd come back and, maybe, and, all this sort of thing. And we wanted to charge. I mean, we just wanted to rip. And, hitting that pause button was really a good thing. It was on my birthday in January of 1989. Or it would have been like 91 actually, because the Olympics were the next year, that we were skiing the Tabla Couloir.
Orientation, yeah.
Yeah, and we jumped the rock in the middle. Yeah. Eve had gone down and set the track, and John and I came down and just launched off that middle rock over his head, effectively.
Was that one of the many dozen times he had to yell at you to calm your asses down?
So, I mean, it was like, mitigation for us was full on. And actually, I explore this topic in my book, 30 Years in a White Haze, that extreme skiing in the US was modeled after the free doggers of the 70s. And it was in conflict with the extreme movement, Valençant and Provence and Sedan in Europe, where they were really extreme skiing. They were mountaineers. In America, we MTV it. We glitz, we glamour, we sell, we sponsor.
Is that what free dog is? Maybe explain what free dogging.
Yeah,
that's a very 70s.
Yeah, the 70s, the freestyle skiers and the hot doggers and Wayne Wong and all that. So, I connect our roots with that. And that's what we're bringing to Val d'Isère and Chamonix in the late 80s and 90s. And Henry and Eve and other people were saying, hey, over here, it's a little different.
And different in what way? More risky, more adventurous, less risky?
Well, more the real risk, right? There was avalanche. There were faces that needed to be thought about. There was more planning. There was more intention. It wasn't just go rip down to the bottom and see how it turns out. So that's where the education really came in for us.
Yeah, of course, because there's a lot less in the States and the ski areas that you have inbounds and then out of bounds. And of course, you guys, when filming, you go out of bounds a fair amount. But you really, because the ski areas are much smaller in North America, which a lot of people don't realize, they can control it a lot more and help you guys, point you guys in, like, very, very specific areas that they might have just controlled for you with explosives and stuff. Whereas when you guys got over here, at first you didn't have to realize that the second you go off off of the marked runs, you're into an unsecured area, and you got to start thinking, and and in those days, and even now to a certain extent, a lot of the professionals and people who know the way, we sort of assess the situation, to have a cigarette, look around, and well, some of us have a cigarette and look around, and it's hard to communicate the assessment you're doing. And that's actually what we've been doing with the whole safety is freedom communication, and helping people like you and everybody who's listening, help them to understand how they can manage their risk and have a much better time out there as a result. And I think, who was the girl who skied with you a lot who went to Chamonix? And she described it really well, saying, it's really good to learn about this and take the steps for risk management, because that way you're not kind of leaving your destiny, your life, to some random thing that you don't know about. And I think it was Kristen Ulmer said that. She was quoted in one of those films that you guys did.
Yeah, picking up on that point, Henry, I think it was a critical time, and it was interesting, right? Because this still happens today. I mean, here we are. You and I've been skiing, in some form or another with you in Val d'Isere for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And still trying to piece together in my mind the names of things, the name of zones, the way in, and if you come around the Fasta Charvet and take the high traverse and all these sorts of things. So when you're first there and with the guide, it's literally another language, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about mitigation for avalanches. They're talking about wind, right? And the föhn, right? All these words in the local language that we had never heard of. And then they're talking about, we're going to ski the Grand Valon, or we're going to go, to Pompers or something like that. So you have to go, well, I think we're going here and I think we're going there. You're anxious. There's a lot of things to consider, right?
Yeah.
And so, through that, and through safety is freedom and all the things you've done, the thing that I've, taken away and sort of bring to my clients when I'm over there and anywhere now is, I always tell them where we're going and why we're going there and how we're getting there, which lift we're on, give more information to kind of calm their anxiety about where we're going and why,
And that's a great, go ahead.
No, but I mean, it's going to be great or, something, but yeah, go ahead.
It's a great exercise, because if you force yourself in a position of leading people around as an off-piste guide, if you force yourself in the position explaining why, then you're not skipping that, because a lot of times when and a lot of professionals as well as very experienced people do get into trouble because they miss very kind of, either it's been called obvious clues or signs of danger after the accident has happened. If it happens, people are often saying, well, gosh, they should have known better. Well, they did know better. They just weren't applying their experience and their knowledge at the time. And one of the ways we've found with the framework that we've developed for helping people to have a good time out in the mountain and reduce the risk of accident is that you force yourself to go through that process, and explaining why to yourself and is great, but it's much better to verbalize it to a group, and also have even someone who doesn't really know the area, but have them a bit as a co-pilot. We both of us, and I've seen you over the years, much more open to answering questions from someone in the group, rather than just like thinking, oh, this he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. We'll talk about it at lunch. That's what we used to do.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
also,
it's interesting because, that experience of not being known or kept in the dark because you didn't know the magic sauce, was really alienating and added to the anxiety of the group.
Yeah.
And so sharing that information, I've seen Andreas and Wayne and you and so many others, Chris, do that right with your groups. And I really take that on to say, okay, one, I tell my groups, we're going to have a great day. And I never tell them why, because I don't want to get pigeonholed into finding powder or finding something. I just say, we're going to have a great experience. And then two, I start to explain about where we're going and what we're going to do when we get there. We're doing this trail because I'm prepping you to go up to that peak.
Yeah.
So pay attention now because you're going to need it then. And by bringing them into the fold for the map of the day, the pacing of the day, the route of the day, they have a greater purpose in what we're going to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think having that, setting the intention is we're going to have a great day. Then backfilling the intention with this is what we're doing and this is where we're going. Now getting to the point where everybody has a great day, there's a clearer path.
Yeah.
How do you assess their tolerance for risk, Dan?
Well, it's a good question. So, I use the performance diamond, which is sort of, why are you here with me? Why did you stumble upon skiing with me, right? And once I find out their purpose, they want to keep up with their kids. They've always wanted to ski this run. They want to get better at a certain thing. Once I understand their purpose, I'll ask them a series of questions. The first question I'll ask them is, how often do you ski? Well, now I'm going to learn about their commitment. They want to go ski the Big Couloir at Big Sky, but they haven't skied all year, or it's their 20th day. Now I know their commitment towards that goal. Then I'll ask them a question. Describe your favorite ski run to me. And I'll listen for the emotion. How much do they love this? What is their passion? What are the words they give me, I'm going to mirror back to them when I explain something. So I understand what they hear. I listen to what they say. I say it back to them and it resonates. If somebody explains skiing in a technical term, I'll aim my technique at the technical. If it's like me, I love the way it feels. I will bring emotion into that discussion. And the last thing I do is technique, because I want to know why they're here, how committed they are, how they feel about it, and then I adjust what we learn. A lot of people come in with what they learned first, and it could be totally off the mark for what their purpose is. So by using this what I call what we call, my friends and I, the performance diamond, starting with purpose, heading to commitment, understanding the emotional attachment, and then tailoring the technique, I'm able to see what their tolerance of risk is. If they're really committed and they're a really dedicated skier, or they have time restraints and they haven't skied too much, but they'd like to achieve this goal and they love it, I can help them. And I can set the expectations for, hey, you might have to side slip in this section. You're not ready to turn here, so be really safe. And I can kind of tailor that instruction in.
Because I guess that's one of those things with risk management, isn't there? Is what level of risk are you willing to take? And what you described there is you're trying to work out where this person's going to be comfortable, or even maybe where they're going to be uncomfortable, because maybe that's where you want to go. But
yeah, I want to understand their expectations and their level of risk, and then I'll be addressing that risk in my conversation with them. One is, I stay away from the negative mind. I don't go into any discussion that has judgment. It's a cold day. I don't mention it. The snow's not great. I don't talk about it. See, I don't want to interject any sort of anxiety or negative thought. I may always make the standard joke. How can snow be bad? It can't be, right? And that's why I open up with, we're going to have a great day. I don't say we're going to have a great powder day. I say, we're going to have a great day. Now, if we find powder, right, Henry, it's a bonus.
Yeah, it's great. Can you do a quick summary of your don't be a powder snob? I still want to get that clip from you.
Well, it's true because some people will say, here in the East Coast where I grew up, if it's 2 inches, we call it a powder day. Somebody else might call it dust on crust, right? If you're in Val d'Isere and you're heading off down the, down the Grand Vallon and it's untracked, like, okay, now you're really having a great powder day. Henry and Wayne and Andreas, they don't really want to cross tracks. I'm like a little different there. I'm like, there's a pillow of snow that's untracked. I'm going in it, right? So, we bring that American, like if it's not tracked somewhere down there, it's fresh, right? So, and then people don't, again, going to that idea that I don't want to mess with the negative mind. I don't want to poo-poo 6 inches or downplay or upplay 12 inches, right? Because if you could have a meter of snow and somebody can't balance and they're going to struggle, right? So I always say, don't be a powder snob. Any snow is good snow, and really set that intention to what a great day is going to be, which is the experience.
That's it. And how do you deal with people who are, let's say very worried about the risk?
Well, so again, that goes to from the very beginning of how I talk to my groups. I won't, I'll compliment. So, hey, great. I love that brand of skis. That's a great ski. Boy, that's for where we're going today. You've made the right choice. So I want to validate their decisions because in their mind, they're thinking, I'm not fast enough. I'm not good enough. And I've got terrible kit, right? But you want to validate those decisions to make them feel good. Hey, you've made a great choice. I love that backpack. Comfortable, huh? Right? So you start to move the conversation away from anxiety. And then at the top of the hill, I'll tell them, look, hey, breathe. Stop holding your breath. Relax. We're skiing. You're not at work anymore, And instead of that, when somebody wants me to analyze their turn, I'll say, stop, why are you holding your breath? Like move away from the critical mind and move them into the now. And you have to do that because their level of anxiety, with me, I'm an extreme skier. I'm a Hall of Fame. Like, you could really say, oh my gosh, I could never keep up with Dan or Henry, right? But what we want to do is come down and say, well, hey, I'm a ski bum. I do this because I love it. And I'm going to share that with you, right? So when you start to break that down and their anxiety starts to calm and people start to breathe and relax, then they come to the point, and Henry will talk about this, low-hanging fruit. They're having a great time. And maybe they haven't even gone to the summit yet.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, Dan, because Henry's Avalanche talk, we kind of talk a lot about to try and unpack the decision-making process to stay safe and avoid avalanches through checklists, through simple questions that you can ask yourself, simple clues that you can look for. And it's all kind of using the system 1, system 2 brain thing. It's all kind of very rational, logical. And I'm very interested in the fact that you talk about dealing with the people's emotional side, and that actually probably has quite a big impact on not only their willingness to take a risk, but how well they handle it, how well they handle a risky situation. So I'm kind of quite taken with it as a different approach from what we talk about at Henry's Avalanche talk.
Well, see, but what I would say is that what's so revolutionary about Henry is that he has packaged it for the consumer. Most Avalanche guys have packaged it for the other Avalanche guy. They want to talk about their snowflakes and their depth Thor and all this stuff that I can't understand. But what Henry's done is he has brought that into, hey, where you going, why, right? So all of these phrases and all this unpacking, it's for everyday use. And that's revolutionary. I don't think people really realize that is so revolutionary. It's only done at Henry's Avalanche talks. Around the world, I've been to, countless heli skiing operations. I've skied with guides on almost every continent, and it's never packaged for everyday use. it's always some level that you might not attain because you don't have your certification. So therefore, it's creating more anxiety than with that approach. Your approach is eliminating anxiety because I can understand what you're saying, and that's why I use it.
And another question I was going to ask you, Dan. You've got this far, and you've been in all these risky places. Do you think you were careful or lucky?
Oh, the good Lord, the good Lord. So, the centerpiece of my book, 30 Years in a White Haze, deals with this exact question, because in May of 1990, I was involved with a mountain accident that killed over 15 people at Mount Elbrus in Russia. And it was led by Chamonix guides, and we were sponsored by Degree 7. And it was really a very poorly run trip from a lot of levels. But my 24-year-old self didn't listen to the guides. And I went beyond. At the turnaround time, I went for the summit. So at 2:00, when they told us to turn around, the young Dan went for the summit. And I was lost in that storm for 38 hours. A Russian found me in my snow cave and saved my life. So I've come pretty close to that edge and really had to evaluate it. Of course, as a 56-year-old man, it's easy to look back and go, that was foolish. But as a 24-year-old upcoming, ski star, I wanted to bag the summit. And so there's you have to start to package this information and temper it for the age of which your clients are as well. Henry and I will always see this when we're working together. If somebody brings their teenage kid or the 20-year-old kid, how I talk to that person is going to be really different than how I talk to their dad, right? I'm going to explain to them, this is not the place to go switch or backwards, right? Like, let's not head off down the couloir going backwards. I've had situations, we tell this story in the book, that I was in Chamonix with a father-son team up on the Guy de Midi, skiing the Mur de Glace, and the father was yelling at me, I want you to take my kid somewhere extreme. I've paid you to take him somewhere extreme. And I was explaining to him that Glacier is extreme. This is a really radical place. And the kid had not skied all year. He was in brand new boots. He was in pain, sitting on the snow. And the dad said, give me a ski tip. He skied away and went into a crevasse. And so, the awareness of where you are really counts, right? And so I had made and mitigated our decisions by where we went, by not going somewhere extreme. And that was in conflict with their purpose.
And did you think you should have gone to the summit? You should not have gone to the summit that day?
In Elbrus?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the 24-year-old Dan probably would always make that decision to go to the summit. It's hard to criticize that young boy.
No,
right?
I'm not criticizing. I was asking you.
Yeah, I would go.
And I thought that would be the answer.
I would go.
Yeah.
So before we come on to we'll get some questions from. If you've got some questions, guys, please put them in the Q&A, and we can start dealing with them pretty soon. Just while they're doing that, Dan, what were your 3 top tips for our listeners on how you manage risk in life in general? Well,
what I say is, it's easy these days to think that there's a redo. I can redo what I just did. And what I always tell people is there's no redos, particularly in mountains and in avalanche terrain. You're only as good as your last decision.
I think I heard you, Dan. You have a great expression for that. And you said that at the top of the Point Perce on like a 55-degree slope that I didn't ski. I went around, you went on it. It was measure once and what is it? No, measure, what was it? Measure once, cut once.
Yeah, right. Well, that was a great day, right?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but you had, I don't know, is that the expression? Yeah.
Well, I always say, that's the main point of that is you're only as good as your last decision. So I had decided on that day at top of Point Perce that I was going, right? And I was all focused on the going. And but once I went, my next decision was like, I already knew I couldn't come back up. You
No,
know,
because you're practically free falling.
exactly. So, when people want redos, I wish I didn't do that. Or can we go back up? No, you can't go back up. We've started down. We agreed we were going down. We're only as good as our last decision. Now, Henry, I've seen Henry do this. I've done it. I know some of his buddies have done. I've been with other Alpine Experience guys when this has happened. Maybe we didn't make the best decision and we traversed out. Now, that was the second best decision we made, right? The first decision we made was we went and we accepted it. Then the second best decision was, it's not so good here. How do we minimize it? And where do we go now? So, this idea that there's a redo in life, I didn't mean to send a text, or I want to erase it, or those sorts of things, they don't apply, right? So one, you have to accept, it's sort of like the idea here in the East Coast, we sometimes, not always, we have icy slopes, and they want to take their skis off to walk down. Well, that's like the worst decision possible. You're skiing, they have edges, your boots don't, and boom, they fall, they hit their head, so you've made the decision to ski, use the tool. Maybe you should side slip down, but walking, that's not a solution, right? So I say very practically, once you've made a decision, you can alter the course, but don't try to redo the initial thought.
Do you think it's the same in business? Because you've done business as well, Dan, haven't you? As on the mountain.
I do. I think there's a huge application to business and being an entrepreneur. And once I call it living without a net. I've chosen the path to live without a net. So I'm basing my decisions off of, I am going to create my own rescue too. I'm the one out here. I'm not going to ask somebody else to come save my butt. I'm going to make these decisions. I'm going to be self-reliant, and that's going to temper how I run my business because I have to self-rescue, right? So it's not a corporation. It's, all those sort of things that come with big business. I'm an entrepreneur. So I don't try to act like a big business guy. I act like an entrepreneur. I'm a risk taker and I'm trying to minimize my risk, but I'm not an entrepreneur who doesn't like risk.
That's great, Dan. Yeah. But before we come on to the questions from the audience, I just want to mention that Henry's this is brought by Henry's Avalanche Talk, and we have been doing a number of things to help people. So right now there are some talks being done online, sponsored by Autovox. You can find the details on henrysavalanchetalk.com. We're also running transceiver training in UK locations where the current government rules allow, in Sandbanks and in Wimbledon, which is an opportunity just to get something done and to get some useful training in before we can actually go out to the mountains and go skiing. But also, I know Henry has been looking at, and we haven't put these on the website yet, but Henry's been looking at some things to support people, because it looks like the resorts may permit ski touring before they will open the lifts. Do you want to talk a little bit, Henry, about, first of all, I think I'd like to ask you to talk, one, about whether you think it's a good idea to go ski touring when the lifts aren't open and when the Peace Patrol is not operational, and then the kind of training that you think would be useful.
Well, I think whether it's a good idea or not, first of all, if the authorities allow it, I think it's very important to respect the decision of the authorities, and I'll maybe get back to that in a moment. But sticking to the question is, I'll just use Jan's very good analogy, is that you're going out there without a safety net. And I'll ask Andreas, who's been following the rules, to type in if he has anything to add, or correct me if I've said anything wrong. But we're going to be allowed to, and we are allowed to go and do touring. I think as far as I know, professionals are allowed to take 5 clients out right now for a few hours. And just to connect to the transceiver training and everything like that, I'm and talking with the guys at Alpine Experience and Andreas about putting on some transceiver training, perhaps with an introduction to touring, during these unprecedented times where the resort is open, but the lifts aren't allowed to run. And so in some, is it a good idea or not? You got to go out there and with the idea that you do not have a safety net. Also, another thing to remember is that the avalanche control that they're not going to be doing in most places, you can't count on avalanche control going on. So it's a very different kind of scenario in and around the resort, and getting moving beyond the piste and going further off piste. I mentioned that the ski areas aren't controlled, and it's the unsecured areas are literally start right next to the marked piste. We're not going to have the effect of skier compaction, which plays a huge role in stabilizing the snowpack all over the mountain. Once you have not just a few hundred, but once you get to sort of tens of thousands of people going on down the classic runs, that really packs down the snow. And once again, just about every year we have a weak layer that's developing. And now on north faces, especially northish faces, sort of above 2,300, 2,400 meters, there's a really weak layer in place that gets packed down by a lot of people, or purged by people setting them off and going from rides. Whether they live or not is another thing. But that's not going to be happening now. So it's going to be like what we refer to as a virgin snowpack that gets a lot of professionals, catches them out in early December. There's a number of very experienced people and professionals who go down their favorite route, and like they did in March the year before, but it hasn't been subject to skier compaction. So boom, in a place that usually doesn't go, they get caught by surprise, and that fits in also with this idea of no low feedback from the environment. Even when a slope is unstable, it does an avalanche, and the skier compaction does play a big role, and we won't have that benefit. I think Andreas is something.
Sorry, you've made the point now, Henry. Yeah.
Okay, they're good. Andreas made the. Okay. Anything else, Andreas? Do you know what specifically individuals on their own without a guide can do, Andreas? If you can type that in. Are they allowed to go out right now, or is it after the 15th? Because I know we are allowed as professionals to take people out on the mountain before the 15th.
The other thing I think that might affect people, though, is the familiarity curse. Whereas if you're on an area that's normally a piste, so you're going down the Arcelle, say, or something, and you're used to the fact that it's completely protected when you go down there, and if you do that now, you have to put your off-piste avalanche awareness hat on, don't you? Because
well, that's right. The rescue's not going to be in.
It's going down the Arcelle, and
the rescue's not going to be in there that quickly. Can we give Andreas about 1 minute to explain what the deal is with because he's been following the laws and the ebbs and flows of changes.
Bring him in. Can he come in?
And while we're doing that, Dan, we've got a question here. Do you have any tactics for when your skis get whisked away by a slide?
Yeah, don't let them get whisked away. It's a great question. So, people don't think often about this, but the ski shop, of course, Andreas, so good to see you. Come on now, where's your photo, buddy? Of course, the ski shop is not setting your binding for these conditions. So a ski that comes off is a dangerous situation, right? You don't want the ski to stay on long enough to get hurt, but you don't want the ski to come off prematurely. Of course, if there was an avalanche, the best thing would be to have that ski off your foot because it would suck you down. Right. And if there was an avalanche, losing your ski would be an okay result if you had your life, right? That wouldn't be the worst situation. But in general, if you're looking for your ski in powder while skiing, I would say you probably didn't have your binding quite turned up enough, because the last thing anybody wants to do is be searching for their ski on a powder day. Powder straps and the sort of bright orange streamers that come off the skis, those work well for trying to locate your ski. But in general, if you're skiing powder, you might want to turn them up a notch or two.
Definitely.
They'll still come off on a slide. Most skis, even when they're cranked in a big fall or something like a slide, they'll come off.
Yeah. Another thought I think is if you feel your skis haven't come off, but you feel yourself being taken.
I think that's maybe the question too, is that if you're being taken away by the avalanche, my quick response is just pray, but you go ahead and.
Well, I mean, if the skis are on your feet and, you know, depending, everything is situational. If you can, you know, kick your arm and kick your feet and be directional with the ski is going to help you be directional. If it's picked up speed and you have lost the control of any directional and you're in a free fall, getting those skis off, you have to pray that the twist or there's no way you'll have the presence of mind to try and get out of your ski in that situation.
Yeah. This is why we talk about escape routes as a last resort. You're not going to be able to outrun an avalanche like these people on YouTube and everything. And heading straight down to the side before it breaks up and your skis get whisked away is the last resort. Of course, prevention is the most important thing, not letting that happen in the first place. But once you get taken, it's like a beast. It's grabbed you. And the best way I've heard it described is and I think it was when I was skiing with you with a clinic down in Portillo, Chile, Danny. The guy, he said he described what it was like, and it was like being in a tumble dryer. And he said and then he said he felt like all his limbs were going to be pulled off of his body. It's a vicious force that you want to avoid.
Henry, you had a question for Andreas about what's allowed, I think, didn't you?
Yes, and Andreas, we can't see you, but you are on. Your mic is on.
Can you hear me there? Hey, Dan. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Andreas.
Hi, we can hear you.
Yeah, so just quickly then on you asking about the laws and the rules, and it's a bit of a gray area for all of us, where at the moment, the law says we're allowed to ski tour as professionals within the French confinement rules here in France. So we're allowed to be 3 hours away within, there's a 20 Ks still. So that's what's going on now till the 15th of December.
20 kilometers from where we live, and for 3 hours.
Where you live, yeah. That's right. You're not allowed to drive 100 kilometers to then go 20 kilometers. You're allowed to ski tour within 20 kilometers of your house or where your residence is for a maximum time of 3 hours. Professionals are allowed to go, we just find out today, with maximum of 5 clients, because it's supposed to be individual. But since they're playing on the safety safety factor, the mountaineering and skiing off-piste and ski touring is actually better to do in numbers for the safety aspect.
Yes.
That's why normally only supposed to do only individual sports now during confinement and the pandemic. But because of safety issues, we're allowed to be up to 5 or 6 people, 1 professional, 5 clients.
Can you explain why? Can you explain why there's safety in numbers, like 4 or 5 people as opposed to just like 1 person or 2?
Well, as you preach a lot, and also in all your talks and all the rest, is in case of an accident, you know, it's very hard for 2 people even to do a big rescue. So if you're 3 or 4 people, it's a better chance to do a self-contained rescue, which we have to count on. And especially in these times, as you say, you know, the resorts are not open. So the closed rescue, the ski patrollers are not working. They're not the ones that can come and save you. So you have to be a few people and know what you're doing. Hence, you have to be even more on top of your game. And when it comes to transceiver training, probing, and even shoveling, that people normally think they know how to shovel, but it's actually not as easy as you think if you don't know how to. And now with no ski patrol handy, there's going to be only the PGHM, the mountain police here in France, and they will take an hour or 2 to come. So yeah, that's extra important to brush up on your game. It's always important, as you preach.
Yeah.
But if anything, this year it's even more important.
So to come back to the brush up on your game. Go for it. Extra important to brush up on your game, not only with prevention, but when you say, you know, it's transceiver, shovel, and probe, and knowing how to dig someone out, because without a shovel, it can take 45 minutes to an hour to get someone out from underneath the snow. With 2 people digging without a shovel, with a shovel and knowing how to use it, 2 people can dig someone out in 10 to 15 minutes. And the basic rule in terms of how long you have to live if you're buried underneath the snow, for those of you who don't know, is about 15 minutes. So that's what Andreas is referring to. If I've understood you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, that's right. And when it comes back to what's allowed, we're still waiting a little bit to hear. There's another meeting on the 11th of December, because then here in France anyway, there's going to be the end of confinement on the 15th of December, where people have been told that they can come to the mountain, come to the resorts, but there won't be any ski lifts. And I can't say how they can come back on their decision now. People are already promoting ski touring for themselves and for professionals. And I don't see how the government can come back and saying, no, ski touring is too dangerous, you can't go now. So that's my personal opinion. They could still come back and say, yes, there's too much of an injury risk, we're going to overload hospitals. But I don't think so personally, and there's no one saying so. So as far as we know, people will be allowed to ski tour by themselves and with professional or small groups up to max 5. But as you say, and that was going to be my comment, you knocked it on the head, that it's going to be a very different ball game, that people who are used to skiing in Germany, we won't have the same ski compaction. It will be off-piste straight away. So it's going to be a very different ball game. So people really have to be, come and enjoy it as we will do, but you have to be extra sharp this year.
Henry's Avalanche Talk, we will publish some guidance on this, I think, in the next few.
And also Andreas and I are putting together a plan, as I mentioned, to offer some transceiver training, introduction to touring, and some ideas about how to manage risk, decision making, risk reduction, and crisis management. And we are going to sort of follow the evolution of things to put a plan together for that. So look on Henry's Avalanche Talk Facebook, and
one last thing before I cut my mic. Sorry, one last thing before I cut my mic, so it doesn't interfere with your broadcast. Is what will happen though, since we are in resorts, the ski patrol will still be working. They will be, that's all over France and all of Europe. They will be damming, grooming pistes for the future to save the snow for April. There will be gradually blasting to keep the resort safe, to keep the villages safe. And that's not there for your safety, quite the opposite. It's going to be a real danger, and it could be conflicts of interest between the professionals trying to save the rest of the season and us that want to go out there. So it's a danger with rat tracks, with cables holding up rat tracks, and the blasting. So people, if you are going to ski tour in what we call in resorts, have to be very careful what the local authorities say and respect those rules. And that's one thing that could actually upset this permission that we'll have to ski tour before the lifts open.
Yeah, this social contract between us, the people, and the authorities, and the ski patrol. Thanks for that. That's a great overview, Andreas. And I'll have to say, I was down in a store today called Au Vieux Compère in Albertville, where the 1992 Olympics was based, and there were at least 20 to 30 people at the end of the morning buying ski touring equipment. So people are even in the local region here gearing up to get ready to go out touring.
Thanks, guys. So before we close off, I've just got one question. If it's actually from Andreas, do you want to ask your question, Andreas?
Yeah, I don't know if people hear me better or read it. It's something since tonight's main subject, it's risk management. Do you feel in your young age and after just a couple of years skiing now, do you still feel that your risk management goes in waves, and your confidence and the decisions you make depending on days, weeks, the hours, who you're with, and how you're feeling in your mood swing? How do you feel your risk management? Do you feel quite stable, or do you feel that some days you're willing to take more risks, some days you're very conservative, and how would you approach that?
It's a really great question, and I love the fact that you bring in sort of the emotion into that. I remember, when people come a great distance, people come from the States to Europe, or in some cases, some people come all the way to Alaska, and they've really come for a great day. And I think we all feel that pressure to deliver a great day, and ultimately that's great snow. A few years back, Andreas, I was with my group and I stumbled upon you coming down towards Ladai. And I was a little frustrated, and I said, geez, I just haven't found anything. And you basically said, we're all in the same boat. And, you had already come to the conclusion that you weren't going to find anything. And I was kind of still in the searching mode. So that was really interesting to me. I've never forgotten that some days you really just have to say, yeah, it's not going to happen today. But overall, transforming from sort of the days of pro skiing to pro guiding, the focus changes from my situation to my client's situation. So over the years, of course, I've probably made more mistakes than I want to admit, trying to put people in great situations. But in general, I'll play it. I don't always go for the lowest hanging fruit, like my good friend Henry has told me to do time and time again.
Go for the low hanging fruit first, Danny.
But I'll tend to step out. I think in general, if you were going to describe my style, it would be a little bit more aggressive, and a little bit more confident. I think also in approach towards how we work with our clients. When you ski with me, you get instruction as well as guiding, and that's almost 50-50. So I'm more apt to really focus in on your stance and things that you can change more than a general comment or suggestion. So my goal in doing that is the better you ski, the cooler places we go. And so I'm always trying to move in that direction. So I think that's just a slight difference. And in general, I think when people come to ski with Dan Egan, they are coming to look for steep and deep, and I try to deliver.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on, actually, there, Dan. It was something along the lines of the better you ski. What was it again? You said the better you ski.
I wanted to touch
places you go. No.
Before we sign off. I think Henry and Andreas bring up some great points about the snowpack, and one of the things I wanted to bring up about that is over the years with powder skis, the snowpack has changed quite a bit. And one thing that has been sort of forgotten about is the islands of safety and how you read the slope and how you navigate the slope on the way down. I tend to see the older guides who skied on straight skis take more traditional routes and stop in more traditional places out of the way of safety. I tend to see the younger crowd
out of the way of danger. You mean out of the way of safety or out of the way of danger?
Out of the way of danger. Thank you. Out of the way of danger. A safer place to stop. And I tend to see the younger crowd that grew up on wider skis, skiing more straight and more flying, with a little lack of awareness around that. And I would think that this year there's going to be a lot of route finding is going to be the key to all descents. Where you go and why, what section you're skiing and why, and the trigger points are going to be more traditional. They're not going to be hidden like they've been so long because of the number of skiers and the type of equipment. So I think that these trigger points are really going to be the discussion. And then Andreas, you bring up a beautiful point. Those trigger points might be in direct conflict with how the patrol and how they're controlling the piece. So there's a lot to that decision, and it's very complicated.
And
thanks for that, Dan. Before you sign everything down, Chris, I just want to say that that there was a question from my kids who love Dan, and Dan's their unofficial godfather to all of them, and official to one of them, Katrina and Jackson and Roscoe. And their question is, when are you coming to Val d'Isère?
I want to come see you guys so bad. I want to come hang out and ski and of course play some football, some soccer. And I can't wait to see you guys again. I miss you all the time. And just steal your mom's cell phone and we'll FaceTime when you can.
Uh-oh.
So,
that spells trouble.
Well, I think I've learned something about the emotional side of risk management today. Thanks, Dan. And that's kind of
definitely, I have too.
For me, that was the kind of the really interesting new point that came up, and I'm sure everybody's picked up their own interesting points on this on risk management. And so if you want to go skiing with Dan, take a look at skiclinics.com. If you want to find out more about it, when his book's published, 30 Years in a White Haze, then you'll be able to read more about that. And we'll be publishing a bit more information about things to think about if you're in a position to go ski touring before the results before all the lifts are open. And things to think about there. And there are a number of training opportunities on henrysavalanchetalk.com. So
yeah, and I think what I'll just clarify that what Andreas was talking about is France, for France, and we're based in the northern French Alps. So that's to clarify where we're based out of and what perspective we're taking on the current conditions of laws and as well as snow.
And and I'd just like to say finally a thank you to Autovox, who have supported us in delivering talks and helped us bring these events online as well. So thank you very much to Dan, thank you to Henry, thank you to Andreas, and thank you to everybody who's joined the call today. And the recording will be put out as a podcast probably in the next 2 days when it's all been edited. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks very much, everybody. Have a
Great
good one.
to see you all. Thanks for joining. A lot of fun. Good job,
See you
Henry.
soon here. Thanks, Dan. And see everyone soon here on Henry's Avalanche Talk, where safety is freedom.